So
sure.
Wow,
really cool.
that's great.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
That's good, and that happens because they probably train for that and have, policies, and and the staff know what they're supposed to do in certain situations, which is kind of the oft overlooked aspect of people checking in and out of hotels, or just kind of, they're just out there. It's like, no, these guys, they have a lot of responsibility, and when they're trained right, that's what happens, which is great.
They were definitely trained right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It reminds me of, there was a story going around this week. I will be fair, somehow it did not come across my social media feed, so I haven't seen it, so this is all hearsay. But there was a situation at Universal Studios, I guess, Orlando this week, with a kid, a special needs kid. I believe he was on the autistic spectrum, but I'm not 100% sure because, again, I've not seen the video. This is not going to be the best story in the history of stories, by the way. But
this is like fourth degree hearsay.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly. But it speaks to the same kind of thing from a training perspective and staff knowing what to do. The kid wanted to ride a specific ride. The specific ride, unfortunately, just before he was due to ride it, broke, and it was late enough in the day that they weren't going to reopen it that day, and everything. And the kid had a meltdown. Had a serious.
Spider-Man? Was it Spider-Man ride?
I think it was I actually think it was the Superman ride. I think it's the one where you get to like fly, like,
Oh, that's not Universal Orlando.
Oh, well then I don't know. Maybe it's the
Superman is DC, Tim.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Universal is Marvel.
I am not the theme park whiz that some people on this
I'm already
show are.
Kind of picking apart the quality of this story.
Okay, Tim just made up this story, but it makes a great point. Okay,
I mean, it's really nice that you're contributing today, Tim.
Hey, look at the time. Time for Ed to go.
Wake up on the wrong side of the bed again? Is this another bad day for Ed? It sure seems like he's starting out with everything else is wrong in the world but me.
There's the eject presenter.
I don't think there's a Superman ride at all.
All right,
anywhere,
man. Whatever the ride is, I don't know.
I've been on Superman.
The kid was on the floor having a tantrum, and the staff, which I guess is the appropriate thing to do, and I'm not trained in this, so I'm no expert, but apparently the staff member actually got down on the floor with the kid and was very helpful in helping calm the child, who was very upset about the fact that this situation had occurred. Mm-hmm. And some folks were pointing out online about the fact of, wow, that's amazing that the staff member knew what to do in this context. And basically people replied of, no, they're all trained for these circumstances. Like, this is something they're well trained in and they know what to do. And again, it speaks to dealing with times that are the worst for people, of making them not so much the worst for people. I mean, that's really the point. It's the point of your story. It's the point of this story.
It is. I mean, and if you think about it, in both cases, they turned what easily could have been the defining disaster of a trip into the shining example of an amazing experience. So they took what easily, in either case, could have been, hey, you know what? I had a horrible vacation. My hotel caught on fire.
Right.
I had an amazing vacation. And oh, by the way, my hotel caught on fire.
Right.
To the point that even telling the story to the team here, the response I get on Slack from one of my team members is, hey, I was just talking to my wife. I think we want to go stay at that hotel. Awesome. So, I had the challenge of challenges, real emergency at the hotel. And, with a smile, it was a super positive experience. It was a great hotel. And I can't wait, because this is a hotel that is going to go offline next year for a massive renovation. They want to make it the new top of the market. Which the hotel's got the makings for it. If you've ever been to St. Pete, it's the tall circular tube hotel with the rotating restaurant on top.
Yeah, it's on the beach. It used to be an old Holiday Inn way before the day.
It sounds like the old Holiday Inn prototype. Yeah.
It's one of the first hotels I stayed at on my first job in travel, because they were hosting a Florida huddle. And I remember it from 2001. 2000. Yeah.
Back in the day when Florida had the mistake of putting tourist on the rental car license plates, we nicknamed that hotel the Tourist County, because it was the most predominant hotel on the beach, and we figured that was the county that all the tourists came from because that was the parking lot was full of them. And now, Ed, I just want to recount something. Weren't you the person that maybe hassled me a little bit about carrying a filter in case of a hotel fire in my bag, and maybe a smoke detector or something? Any resending on those taunts? No.
I mean, they had a fire alarm that alerted Ed and family.
They had a
top floor of a hotel, fire goes off, and you're thinking you're perfectly safe. Okay.
And it's a concrete building.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I'll be walking down breathing free in my little.
Hey, Lauren.
I think Lauren, if you brought your own fire rope, if you brought your own
traveling
fire rope,
for 20-ish years now, and this is the first time a hotel I've stayed in has caught on.
Only takes once.
What I always do is I always bring with me. I always make sure that I get a pool view and I bring a diving board.
There you go.
So so no matter what,
I rubber ducky inflator.
I do a little Greg Louganis action, and
I actually have my, after 9/11, they sold the rappelling kits that you could bring with you that you just break the window. It can rappel out. Do you remember those emergency kits that you could buy?
I do remember those.
How much line did those things have with them?
That's the problem.
And how did you anchor? Yeah, and what did you use to anchor the end of it?
You don't see them sold anymore. So
there's my portable expandable ladder.
Yeah.
My portable expandable ladder may not be a good safety thing for over 10 stories.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
Probably not.
I tied the end of the rappelling kit to the chair. I don't know what the problem is.
I think I'm going to get one of those chutes that you throw out there that you slide down like they do with the garbage when they're renovating. One of those chutes you pop out.
I mean, if we're all living in the land of fantasy, I'm just going to bring out my inner gamer geek, and I want one of those guns from Portal that I can just shoot a portal on the floor,
What are you talking about? I just rode the elevator down and jumped at the end.
But which, by the way, in all honesty, is a point out of all of this is that please be mindful of where the stairs are located when you do check into a hotel.
That is a good point.
Because it is a good point to be made that you always look on the back of the door, because just because you came out of the elevator doesn't mean the stairs are nearby either.
Right.
So make a point. Because
how many people, even when they come out of their hotel room, turn left and go the wrong way, and oops, that's not where the elevators are. I'm not, I can't remember coming in. Yeah. So if it's an emergency, that's it.
So all in all, kudos to the team. I've emailed the GM. I also got to do the fun thing because I work with this group, so I'm sitting on the steps of the banquet hall, which is away from the building, and emailing the executive team at the group saying, not to alarm you, but your hotel's on fire.
Yeah,
I think it's gonna make an interesting flip to photo story. And here's the flames, and here's
and also kudos to St. Pete Fire Department. Holy smokes!
Holy smokes, he says.
Yes. Less than a minute after we walked out the door, the first fire engine arrived, and they had 6 trucks show up.
Wow.
6 different crews. They had the ventilation system, like portable ventilation system. They were Johnny on the spot. All in all, St. Pete's just solid experience for emergency.
Congratulations, that's outstanding. Can I ask a dumb question?
I understand they practice too. I've heard.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I heard. Yeah.
So,
if I can ask a dumb question, I have only been to Tampa once. I don't know St. Pete well. It's not an area I've spent much time in. I live in a very sleepy little town, and when you call with an emergency in a sleepy little town, the entire fire department and police department and rescue squad and everybody all show up too, just because they have nothing better to do. Or is St. Pete not like that?
So St. Pete's a sleepy town.
Got it.
Big enough though that they had 6 different engines show up.
Well, actually, that's St. Pete Beach, and the fire station is literally 3 blocks away from you on the north side. So they obviously more trucks than what they carry. I mean, to their credit, they responded more than just the local station did.
Yeah. And then the police closed down the road in front of the hotel and directed traffic. It was quite impressive. And, the fact that the staff was kind enough to tell us that the restaurant out back was open also made the 2-hour wait to return to the hotel not as arduous. Although the people watching, because it did happen during peak people arriving back from dinner. So to watch people's reactions as they pull up, and there's fire trucks everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're holding their to-go
Not
box,
good.
and they're just like, they all have the same
Yeah.
look on their face of what floor was it.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So,
That's funny.
Mr. Robert, you did
Yeah.
curate a wonderful list. There is a couple articles I definitely want to make sure that we hit, but by all means, please, which one would you like to highlight first?
Can we talk
Oh.
about the one about the Superman ride?
There is no
Sorry.
Superman.
Actually,
There.
actually,
I'm
I think
sorry,
I
was-
think before we move on, we should mention Hotel Mumbai. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie that came out, which was very good. It was about the terrorist incidents in Mumbai, but
It was
quite a while ago,
it was
right?
2008.
2000. Yeah,
And I actually
yep.
know this because I worked for the leading hotels of the world at the time. And actually, the
Ah.
Taj Mumbai Palace was one of the hotels. And we actually were part of the response team on that.
Ah.
I am very aware of that story. Unfortunately,
It's a
I did
very,
know
very
the
good
GM,
movie.
unfortunately, who lost his life. It was a really tough situation. The Taj people did a marvelous job.
Yeah.
But that whole situation is
the movie's
crazy.
very, 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 very good about a situation where, in this case, there have been some training, but it was a very fluid situation where people did not know what the hell was going on.
Right.
Yeah, not something you would necessarily plan for.
By the way, I do want to say for the
basic
record,
truth.
I want to say for the record, I just said on the response team, on the communications response team, obviously. We were in New York, obviously trying to get messaging to
SEAL Team Tim.
No. I'll tell you what, that was
Interesting.
one of the weirder incidents in my career in terms of we didn't have a lot of information. We were trying to determine what was appropriate to communicate to families of guests who were over there, what we should put on the website, what we shouldn't put on the website, what was appropriate, where the rights. The biggest challenge we had, actually, this was really interesting, and it speaks to what they did well in the situation you just discussed, Ed, was the biggest challenge we had was, the information coming to us wasn't great, right? We were getting lots of calls from families of guests overseas and things like that, or families of guests who had booked through Leading, wondering what was going on and, who should they contact and the like. And it was, it was a real challenge because the information we had was really not great at first, So those situations are tough to train for. We actually put in place after that a whole series of response plans and the like. We'd had some pre-developed, and then immediately you discover, okay, here's the parts of this that went really well, and here's the parts where we didn't have a damned clue what we were doing. And it was it was an eye-opening experience, actually. I remember it very well. It was the night before Thanksgiving in 2008, if I remember the year. It was either 08 or 09, but I'm pretty sure it was 08. And it was the night before Thanksgiving specifically.
Yeah. Interesting use of Twitter, because those were kind of Twitter's early days. I don't know if you guys know Tim Hughes, who's with Agoda.
Yeah.
Great guy. Tim's, I think, sister-in-law was staying in the hotel, and they were getting better information at that time off of Twitter, of what was happening real time, of people on the ground going, here's what's happening. And they found out through Twitter that she was okay, that somebody, again, that's not a great, thing.
That was the challenge, because some of the stuff on Twitter was, I was on Twitter at the time. We were using data from Twitter sometimes. But again, you were getting so many conflicting reports of, hey, everything's cool, no, there are still people wandering around, shooting at folks and the like. It was a really, it was
who are the reliable sources?
Weird, It's in my career, it was the only time I've ever really had that experience. On 9/11, it was a very different thing, specifically. But, people looking to us, and I want to be fair, there were people looking to a lot more people than us. We were hardly, the only game in town for this, but we certainly did have families of guests contacting us and the like. And your ability to get reliable information was really challenging. And, our default position was, don't spread anything that we don't actually know that's been verified by multiple reliable sources. So many cases, unfortunately, our answer had to be to folks, we're, aware of the situation. We are doing our best to get more information about your family, your friends, whomever, and we will absolutely get in direct contact with you the moment we have some, credible, reliable information about that. But a lot of the answers were just, we don't know, and we're doing everything we can to find out.
Yeah.
It was a weird situation.
Yeah, and when it's a 10 or 11 hour time difference, that's not.
It certainly added. Yeah, it certainly added to it. It did. I don't mean to be all like dark and heavy or anything along those lines. It reminded me when I went to work for Wyndham. I started there in 2001, and we were looking for a new content manager. I know, it's crazy. And we were looking for somebody to run content for the websites and the like. And I interviewed a woman who had worked at American Airlines. And you're doing the standard. You see where this is going. I worked. I did the standard. Can you tell me a time when you had to deal with a difficult situation in your career, or something like that? And she said, well, on 9/11, yada, yada. And I was just like, oh, my gosh. All right. Done. Certain, nobody's topping your story. And then, of course, had to deal with something similar, but on a much, much, much lesser scale on 11/26 of 2008. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, Ed's story. Ed is now putting up against all of those story. His ice machine on fire, 3 floors below him. That's, I think, an equally traumatic story that will go on in the annals of.
Not said by me.
There's a joke I'm not making. We're going to move off this.
That statement goes along with there's a Superman ride statement. But with that, I do apologize. I actually wasn't going to be able to make this show, but I could not miss our 200th episode out of respect for Lauren, who has never missed an episode. But I do have a call I have to get on. So, gentlemen, as usual, I made it all about me.
And for the record, there is a Superman. There is a Superman ride, but it's at Six Flags. So.
Yes. Is that a theme park?
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know, man. This is what happens with hearsay. Pretty soon it was going to be, the Rocky and Bullwinkle ride at at Disney at Action Park.
Yeah, Action Park.
All right, gentlemen, congrats on 200 episodes, Lauren.
Thank you, Mr. Ed.
The fact that you continue to keep this ragtag team of people showing up on a semi-regular basis is truly impressive. And Robert, the fact that you put effort in every week to try and get us to talk about something is also impressive. So
someday, some year, by the 500th show, maybe we'll do it.
Maybe.
All right, gents. Have a wonderful weekend.
Have a great weekend, Ed.
Thanks, Mr. Ed.
Bye.
We'll talk to you. I don't know. I think Ed didn't wake up on the right side of the bed today. He was grumpy.
Just
when you get awakened in the middle of the night by a fire alarm, that's going to do it.
Right.
Just so you know, that story for will be. Remember when Grandpa Ed saved the family in that blazing
fire? By the time that story gets down to the next generation,
he ran back into the building with the extinguisher. Yeah, exactly.
Ed's going to be like, and that's why when I travel, I always pack an axe.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yes. Anyway, so Mr. Robert, there actually is some very cool articles in there, and I do have some insights from my discussions in Europe that I would love to share with Tim. I'm glad you're on the show with it today because, you go to Europe much more than I do and deal with clients much more than I do in EU. I only have a few correspondences in Europe compared to yours. And I really was surprised by some insights that I had being over there. And I just would love to share your perspectives on it as to sometimes the assumptions that I make and versus the realities that I came across were a little different. And I thought a very interesting perspective shift.
I mean, if Robert doesn't mind.
The Dutch have a different word for everything. It's so bizarre. Do you know?
I get just as a point of it, I gave the assumption to the EU because of their advanced relationships with or their advanced processes with GDPR, their attack on Google and Facebook as to the moderation of their influence and so forth, that I felt that they had a more engaged perspective as to the usabilities of tools, techniques, platforms, strategies. And when I got over there, I found that there was a very mixed bag. And this is no negative detriment to anybody I spoke with, anybody in the room. That it was just that I assumed there was more of a advanced engagement on some things, and I was surprised to find that there was actually a recedence of it. There was some things that I thought that they were completely aware of that they weren't even aware existed in some capacity.
Right.
And to me, it was just an eye opener in that sense. I didn't know if you ever felt that over there.
No, I definitely did. I want to be very careful here because I'm going to make some broad generalizations, and obviously there is a wide spectrum of hotels that I've worked with, hotel companies I've worked with, in terms of their level of sophistication, in terms of their level of engagement with what's happening in the digital marketplace, the digital ecosystem overall. I think that there's a tendency, and I'm making a broad generalization here, right? That there's still more focus on hospitality in terms of the art of hospitality that has been practiced for a long time. I would say there are more true hoteliers. You don't seem to run into the real estate play version as much as you do here in America, as a broad generalization. And as a result of that, there's a tendency to be less engaged with digital as a channel, probably in part because there's so much more independent rooms. There's so many more independent properties and the like, and they run as their own distinct business, and they do things. I don't want to say the way they've always done them because that's not giving people near enough credit, but they still are doing things the way that were more traditional. Right. Is the way I would say. Right. Mm-hmm. There's an inherent. I'm treading lightly here because I want to make sure I don't paint with too broad a brush. Conservatism. There is an art of hospitality. There's a traditional way we've done things. Yes, we're open to change. Yes, we're absolutely willing to learn and willing to partner and things along those lines. And also, we don't want to lose sight of what has made us great hotels or a great hospitality experience for many, many, many years.
And some of it's a pragmatism of we could do stuff with a computer, but is it going to make it a better experience for the guest?
Right.
Or is it, don't have a tool just to have the tool.
Tim, I'll put a pillow under what you're saying. When I was dealing with and talking with people that had engaged in the presentation that I had done, always massively impressed with the heart of the servant spirit of hospitality with them. Yeah. Where it was 10 years behind the front desk before they were awarded an assistant management role.
Oh yeah, sure.
There was their career choices of education to even get in the door of some places that they worked at. And meanwhile, as I'm talking to an individual, he says goodbye to somebody in Dutch, hello to somebody in Arabic, and over in German. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Please, what I'm saying in reference to exactly what you're pointing out to is there's a willingness, but also a bit of reservation to filtering it through. Is it a real improvement in our business relationship with our guest, or is it just something flashy or different? I don't in any way create a negative that they are ignorant of anything or that they're blind.
No. I don't think you're saying that. I certainly hope I'm not saying that.
Yeah, but by the same token, I felt kind of like the premise of the movie Yesterday, where if nobody knew the Beatles song and you brought them, how much people would love them. When I made this whole presentation that I really built around the Facebook F8 presentation, F9, sorry, the Google releases, thinking that I had to be front edge on all this stuff. After some general conversations, literally the day before I was doing this presentation, I threw it on a pile and brought back an older presentation and brought it up to current speed on some stuff because all of a sudden, stuff that I thought that they would already baseline know, they were completely unaware of. And I'm like, oh, crap.
And I mean, it's going to depend on the audience you're talking to. It's going to depend on the hotel. Going to depend on the company.
I had a lot of revenue managers, operations, and sales, and very few marketers. So their awareness of these things was not as heightened as somebody in the space.
Right. I'll give you a real-world example. A client I worked with, and obviously for reasons that are going to be apparent, I'm going to be very, very coy here. But a client I worked with, they were very sophisticated in terms of where they wanted to go. They had a great vision of they'd read all the same stuff everybody read. They knew all the Focusrite reports. They knew all the stuff. Like these were sharp people. And they also said, much like Robert said a moment ago, 80% of this is not going to change our guest experience. And so we're not going to bother wasting any time or energy on that. Right. So it comes, this is something we've talked about on the show a lot. If I could make a bold pronouncement that is probably half BS because it's too broad a generalization. But if I was going to make a generalization, I would say, in my experience, the average hotel operator in the EU that I've encountered is a hospitality person and works in the hospitality industry, right. And a much greater percentage of people that you run into in the US work for real estate companies that happen to own hotels. Right. Yes. And so their approach to it is really driven more from that perspective. Mm-hmm. As a gross generalization, there are absolutely big, REITs and big real estate investment groups and the like over in Europe. And there are absolutely some amazing hospitality groups here in the States, here in North America. But broadly speaking, I think that's where you see the difference. Mm-hmm. Because think of what the discussion has been here in the States for the last couple of years. It's been, how do we lower the cost of distribution? Mm-hmm. Right? That is the overwhelming discussion. How do we lower our cost of marketing? How do we lower our cost of distribution? How do we lower our cost of guest acquisition? Right? It's a cost-driven play. It is a, how do we make it cheaper to put heads in beds? And if I could, again, since I'm making this comment, I may as well double down on it. Is the difference I run into when I talk to hotels operators and the like in Europe, it tends to be, how do we create a better experience for our guests?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, in broad strokes,
better experience. How do you create value? How are you creating value, and what are you doing? And in some cases, yes, maybe looking at the competition, things like that, but really kind of being good at what you're good at, because of your hotel was built for a particular, purpose to do a certain thing, and doing that, very well is kind of a job, checkbox, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, you have to grow, you have to be doing more. How are you going to do better next year? Then this year, from a financial perspective, number one, how are you going to beat your numbers? And it doesn't necessarily matter. Well, you need more margin or need more profit. Well, if you can't make the revenues go up, then you better damn well make the costs go down.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Flat out. Yeah. And then that's how you check the box.
Yeah. And so some of the discussions we have in terms of, what's going on with Google or what, yada, 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 just don't take as much precedence, because, it's just a channel. We'll figure it out. We need to make sure we have connectivity. We need to make sure that we can, our inventory shows up and whatever. And also I've got, I got guests I got to check in. I've got a conference I'm trying to book. I've got, they're very operationally minded, very service minded. In my experience, generally speaking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And some of them do a better job, and some of them do a better job. They'll have listings. How do you get to just really simple stuff? They may have a very basic website, but it says, here's how you get to the hotel from the airport. Here's how you get to the hotel from, the train stations. Here's how you get from, if you're driving or whatever.
I'll add to something, which is nice. That they don't push it at you. They leave it in reserve for you to discover. They don't. I think that there's a double edge to this sword as to how they handle this. At the hotel I stayed at, which was a long-term stay hotel, and I have opinions about how they handle that. There's good and there's bad, and there's always mixed out of it. Only come from the industry perspective that I have on it. But the all this stuff that they can do for you is literally by request. If I wanted to know how to get to the train station, they had wonderful information that they can hand me on exactly the distance, the direction, how to, what trains, what times, and so forth. But they didn't shove it in your face as a discovery. It was, if I wanted it, I could ask. If I wanted to know something about groceries and picking up groceries and buying groceries, or getting cars or renting bicycles or all this other stuff, it was there to be discovered, but it wasn't prevalent for me to find.
You're saying, well, and I think what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but as a friend of mine likes to say, I think I heard what you thought you said. That there's less active merchandising and upselling and things like that we run into.
Yes,
I think that's probably true as a generalization. Again, I think there are some companies that do a very good job of that. In a more service-oriented way. I mean, you look at somebody, we talk about them here on the show all the time. You look at somebody like Citizen M. I think they have a terrific upselling. Oh, hey, Seth. They have a terrific upselling process. They have a terrific way of, monetizing the stay beyond just, the room night. Oh, yeah. But they do it in a way that feels very organic and comfortable and not in your face, right?
And
I went by Citizen M at Schiphol Airport and went in specifically to see how they engaged somebody that walked into the property.
Yeah.
Whether I was checking in or not checking in, just whatever. And there was no pervasiveness of, well, you're not a guest or are you checking in? It was simply a matter of being like perfect service at a restaurant. It's there when you need it. It's not invasive when you don't. And it doesn't dominate your experience.
And that's the hospitality focus.
Yeah, and that was a great feeling that I had there compared to the hotel that we did stay in, which was very reserved in the engagement. As a matter of fact, I mean, we could check ourselves in if we wanted to, and the key would be given to us, which was pre-keyed on arrival because it was a long-term stay hotel. The room was only cleaned every third and sixth day.
Sure.
We're staying there.
Yeah.
There was a grocery store down below that actually had a live herb section that you cut off the herbs if you wanted to cook with stuff. Sure. There was some fun little nuances to it. And then by the same token, the people that were staying there was way broad spectrum. You had Eastern European people that were doing contract work that were staying for a number of weeks in the location. You had families that were there. You had us as a couple that was there. That were staying for at least the minimum stay at this location, the Emirath Hotel in Ben Hovedorp, was 7 days. You had to be there at least 7 days to check in. So, all these functions, it had a game room, it had laundry rooms that were included. They gave you soap for your laundry. There was lots of fun things about it, but the staff was minimalistic. So if you wanted something, you actually had to go look for it. It wasn't always there for you.
I mean, it's a long-term truism that, when you talk about hotels in Europe and you talk about hotels in Asia compared to hotels in North America, the easiest way to think about it is you add a half star, right? When you're talking about a 3-star property in North America versus a 3-star property in Europe, you're really talking about a 3-star property versus a 3.5-star property. Now, but the service is a different approach. And I don't think it's bad or good. It's a different way to go about it. I take that back. I do think it tends to be good to do it more in the European way, but it's a different approach, and it's driven by typically different, financial measures and different objectives. So, with the broad caveat that, again, at least 2 of the clients I've worked with over my years in Europe, and I'm probably forgetting a couple just because I haven't worked with them as recently, but at least 2 that come immediately to mind probably were the most forward-thinking hotel companies I've ever worked with, just in terms of they had a long-term vision. They have goals. They have ambition for where they're trying to go. They see where the market is going. They recognize some realities there. I shouldn't say some realities. They recognize the realities there. And also are saying, how do we be true to this thing we've always been while acknowledging that other reality is true too, right?
Yeah.
To me, the fertile ground that I saw was none of these hotels, for the uniqueness that each of them represent for what it is that they provide as service levels, is truly optimizing their voice in market. They are collectively apparent in their market. They are identified in their market, but their uniqueness or individuality isn't as nuanced as we tend to amplify in the States here, where every function of the individuality in comparison to our competitive set is highlighted. Over there, they tend to be more demure about their individuality aspects. It's more about commodity and exposure than it is about individuality and uniqueness. It's a different marketing point to it. And I think, wow, man, if you just amplified that, you could dominate.
But they're competing in a very different marketplace too.
Yes.
Right. The tour operator business is much larger overseas, generally speaking. There is still at the high street travel agent is still a bigger thing there, right? There's a lot more travel trade business, generally speaking, than we see in North America these days. So I would caution against saying, so what we need to do is pick up what they do in Europe and transplant it over here.
No,
because or vice versa, but for that
Right.
matter.
Right.
No,
Because
there is a blending. There is unique things that can
Right.
be done, but not take this model and put it into Europe and say, oh, let's do everything we're doing in the States for you because, man, you're really going to amp it up. No, because you're talking differently to different people,
Right.
and it doesn't relate the same. And to your point, there's still in the centrals of all the towns and so forth, there's still travel agents that are thriving.
Right.
They are the place that their families have always gone to travel with, they go to this travel agency to literally negotiate their family's travel. They don't do the traditional,
Right.
let's go check 15,
Right,
22
right,
sites.
right.
And in many cases, if that's a great travel agent, that's a better way to do it. You
Yeah.
might wind up
Yeah,
with
yeah,
a much
yeah,
better
yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But the funny part with the European with Brexit and the separation, there's so many things. And again, I always feel that when we travel outside the States, you get a more true picture of world global news. The things that EU is struggling with right now, the complexity of the politics, the EU election that just happened for the representation of all the countries, Brexit, and the failures and the changes and transitions about what it actually means, both from education point of view and funding and all these things, and whether you have to have travel documents. And I mean, it's a huge nest to unravel with everybody right now over there.
Yeah.
And it's creating a lot of ambiguity on travel. Their travel, like last year, their long, hot summer was a massive shift in their business cycle.
Yeah.
That was a huge discussion with all the people that were in the attendance. Is that long hot summer they had last year crushed some of their markets? I mean, totally barren them out. It was like as if nobody's traveled to Florida during spring break just because the weather was good enough not to. That kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was in Spain 2 weeks ago, and I was in Barcelona, and actually, it was remarkable how prevalent the anti-travel sentiment is there in terms of
over tourism,
and the like. And you're seeing some of that in the last week in Venice, with the cruise ship.
That was huge news. That was huge news.
But the reason it became such a, I mean, first of all, it's a crazy thing to see, and obviously some people got hurt, and thankfully everybody was mostly okay. But again, it raises that same over tourism question. So, I mean, there are a lot of issues at play there that I think we want to be very conscious when we're talking about, to say, some of these things are, the nuance matters, right?
The cruise ship thing, and we've been on a lot of cruises, and our family likes cruises a lot, but I couldn't imagine. We had a great time in Venice. It was my first time there, but we were there at the end of March, right? Which was great because it's not peak tourist season. I could not imagine being there if once you got, 4,000 or 5,000 people popping off of a cruise ship or multiple cruise ships, right? In market at the same time. That's got to be an unworkable situation for them.
Well, I was there in November the first time I ever went, and it was busy enough that I can only imagine.
Well, Tim, you're saying about Barcelona. When we were there, and this goes a few years back, we were going down the main thoroughfare.
I know where you mean. I was actually outside the city, but
But as we're going towards it, we were looking for lunches. We're going towards the bar. We said, "Oh well, let's get away from the main centrum because if we go farther away, we'll see what other choices." And all of a sudden, we kept noticing the prices were going up, not down. And we're like, what's going on? Because we're going into cruise ship range. When they get all pile off the boat, they can only get so far before their time schedule makes them go back to the boat.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
That range around the cruise ships, the prices were elevated because they could afford to pay, have people pay for those prices. Because they couldn't get farther than those ranges. But, the other thing that made the news over there was the unfortunate, the one ship hitting into the tourist boat with the South Korean.
Well, that's the thing I'm mentioning, right? That's what got people saying, basically.
Because there's just so much.
Bringing these cruise ships up the Grand Canal, not the Grand Canal.
Well, there's another one. There was another one that happened on the Danube where the
I didn't see that.
Hit one of the local charter, one of the local tour riverboats, and just capsized it. And unfortunately, 30-some people passed away. They were all in their
the last week.
Yeah, it doesn't make.
I didn't even hear.
It was over in Europe. It was an unfortunate circumstance where. One of the larger boats just literally plowed and capsized the smaller little river tour boat over, and it was from South Korea. The live South Koreans passed.
Oh my gosh, 17 people. Yeah.
And
then my God, 19 people actually now.
And it just, the South Korean delegation shows up and so forth. And just,
oh my God, I hadn't even heard this. Oh, that's
and
terrible.
That's the thing. I mean, the news gets covered differently. Obviously, we all know. I mean,
well, I've been running a workshop for the last 3 days, also. So.
But these things, going back to the the tourism thing of like Yosemite and so forth. There's a cap to how many people can go into the park now.
Right.
Because there's just an unsustainable amount of demand for some of these places now. And, for that, from a marketing perspective, for the markets that don't have this saturation issue, this is an open opportunity to develop unique interests.
Yeah, for sure.
That you don't have to go to a certain beach where you can go to another beach. Yes, it's not that beach, but one, it's more affordable. Two, it's more accessible. Three, you have opportunity to enjoy it a little bit differently than the density that the other one has. There's always a bright side to some of this stuff, and it would help possibly to diffuse some of this centric demand to some of these high traffic tourism sites if there's alternatives that are undiscovered. One of the biggest social lines that I used to use in social campaigning, still do, is off the beaten path or local interest, where you let people discover things that may not be known, that aren't the Stonehenge, but they're just as good because they're something different.
Well, and it's
tricky though. It's tricky the less experienced the travelers are, though.
Yeah.
Because you really wind up, they want to check the major.
Right.
I saw this. I did that. And in many cases, they aren't appreciating, whatever, the museum. They aren't appreciating the Louvre. They wanted to go see the Mona Lisa, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go in there, they wait in line, they do all this stuff. They make a beeline to it. They go, wow, that's smaller than I thought it was. And they're gone. And what do you think of the Louvre?
It kind
of sucked. Yeah. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't that great.
So
a lot of it. We call that the NFL.
I also have a hard stop today. I wanted to make sure I was here for the 200th episode. But I wanted to say I don't want to end on a down note. Because I'm actually pro tourism like crazy. But the point that, as you might imagine, but the point you just made, Lauren, I think is really key about the undiscovered and things along those lines. And also it goes back to something we talk about on the show a fair bit, but sell the destination first. I mean, especially if you're someplace that's a little off the beaten path, if you're a little less trafficked, or your secondary market or things along those lines. Most of those places have some amazing things to offer travelers, and it's a question of saying, hey, let's help you understand and explore and discover this destination. And we happen to have a hotel here, right? Or we happen to have a resort here. Not come to our place, come to our place, come to our place. Well, why should I come to your place? I don't know. Like that's
no specific reason.
No specific reason. We've got a hotel. Like that doesn't work.
If you're trying to get a higher ADR, right? Because you're trying to do something, that's what makes the difference. I mean, you've got to have either a better physical plant or better service or a better location or maybe a better reason to exist. Some way to get a premium.
To that argument, Tim, you weren't on the show when I showed this off as my new toy, and I brought it over to Europe to bring with me. It was my 5.7K 180-degree 3D camera that also turns into a 5.7K 360-degree camera.
Cool.
And the cool part of this is that it does the stitching in the app. Before, it used to be an arduous process of you had to take all the things it does, put it together, download it, redamp it, huge files, blah, 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 load up. Facebook's made it easier. YouTube's made it easier to load these things up direct. But the cool part is the resolution. I don't even have a TV that has this resolution, but the clarity of the pictures are such and the video is such that there's crazy things. The camera that's similar to this one, that they put it in a little Nerf ball and they throw it, and then you focus where you want the person to watch the video. So you can do things like somebody doing a slam dunk, the thing floats up and goes through the net with the ball. And anyway, from a travel tourism point of view, when I was on the boat tours in Amsterdam, when I was walking through the museums and so forth, this stuff is crazy for a hotel for $400 to buy a camera and literally do some of their own stuff where they can put up some great engagement stuff.
But Lauren, it does not do 360-degree 3D. It's only 3D at the 180. I mean, come on.
So first of all, I agree with you completely. I also want to say, right? I completely agree. Let's be clear. I also want to say, if you don't want to drop the $400, get somebody on your team out there with a damned iPhone taking pictures of stuff and put it on your website and all.
Or even even an Android.
Or even an Android. Yeah, whatever. Your Pixel. I don't really give a crap.
A Polaroid. It doesn't matter.
And the amount of properties and the amount of destinations where you don't see people doing enough of that is epic. And you're missing an opportunity. I know this is something I hammer on again and again and again and again and again, that you need to distinguish the destination. You need to give people a reason to go there. Why is Barcelona dealing with over-tourism? Why is Venice dealing with over-tourism? Why is Paris dealing with over-tourism? Because everybody knows them. Yes, I recognize that they're phenomenal cities, they're phenomenal places to be, etc. But come on, no matter where you are. We went years ago to a spring training game in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Yeah. And right near there, they have the coolest modern art museum I've been in years. And we spent a rainy afternoon walking around this cool little modern art museum that was, wonderful stuff, great workshops being given by a local artist in residence. You could see art being made by kids, being taught by an artist as it was happening. This was really cool. With no disrespect to Port St. Lucie, hardly, a premier destination, right? This is not a primary market by any stretch. Yeah. And it was one of the loveliest holidays we've ever had.
Actually, one of their oldest slogans was the undiscovered part of Florida.
Well, exactly.
Literally, because it was, and you were only a few miles away from an incredibly cool antique car collection down in Jupiter that is phenomenal. I mean, the cars that are there are one-of-a-kind cars that they have there. But again, to your point, and this even goes more predominantly for Europe, every place you go to has some historic value. Every place you go to has some local museum. Even here in Central Florida,
restaurants, great places to eat.
Absolutely.
Don't go to Starbucks. Go to the cool little breakfast place, which is
And make sure your guests know that all of those places exist.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's where some of these technology things are coming in, is that you now have a medium to use to expand. And to your point, Tim, it can be your own phone. And I've said this before many times, to Google Streets, do your own 360s and have them automatically go on Google Maps. I finally used the AR in Google Maps for the walking. When
yeah.
I love that. I'm holding it up. It's like, go here, and the big arrow is saying, take a left down this little place. And, incredibly helpful having the AR experience with the Google Maps,
And that's how the cruise ship guy crashed. He was using the AR.
Probably was, to be fair, he had a motor malfunction in their blower on the bow where he couldn't shut off the lateral bow thruster, and they couldn't power it off.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the lateral bow thruster. I was definitely all about that.
Yeah. Tim had surgery. Tim had surgery for that a couple of years back.
I was going to get the flux capacitor warmed up, and we were going to get to 1.2 gigawatts and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, but the crew was blasting the horn and telling people that they couldn't control the ship, so they were trying to get people out of the way, but. Still did the big bump and grind. But anyways, Mr. Tim, I do appreciate the fact
my apologies. I got to run early today, but always great seeing you guys. I will be here next week, so enjoy. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next Friday. Happy 200. Cheers.
That's right.
Thank you. And for those who want to know where to find Mr. Tim, they can go to timpeter.com. For everything. So, Mr. Robert, it's up to us again. We can hit some of these wonderful topics.
Even just what we've been talking about. The hotel knowing why it's there and what is it. Citizen M's a great example. All their rooms are the same. They're only single or double. They don't have connecting rooms. They aren't necessarily designed for families. They've consciously made the decision. Here's what we do, and you know what? The family stuff, not that they hate kids, hey, that's fine. If you want to bring your kids or you have 4 people or whatever, yes, they'll make arrangements to get you 2 rooms which are near each other and stuff like that. If you let them know in advance, that's great. But it's not designed where people go in there and go, hey, we want a double and we're going to do whatever. It's like, no, that's not us at all. So I think that's point 1. And then point 2 is all these cool places in the town, you've got to train the staff to understand, hey, here's a family sort of thing. They're walking even in and out of whatever, the Courtyard or the Hampton Inn or something like that. Make sure that the staff's trained to know, hey, here are various places you go that are great, fun places that families really love, versus here's a couple who you may find out they're there for a honeymoon or this, or even if they're there for a funeral or what, you can kind of go, hey, here are places that are a little bit more quiet or whatever, and don't go send them to the, super party bar, which may be the greatest unknown spot on earth. But what's suited to these people's trips, and not just the ones who are giving you a kickback or whatever, or kicking back something with concierge, but the ones that are what's best for the customer. Yeah.
This kind of goes to one of your articles about the rise of the hotel owner that I put the quote in from Stephanie that I thought was the highlight of the article, in the sense of how this brazen, because it kind of goes with, well, how do you know you're in a bad restaurant? You know you're in a bad restaurant when the menu is really big and there's a diversity and there's no clarity as to the food that's being offered. It's trying to offer a little bit of everything, which means it's trying to capture
what's good
eating, right?
Yeah. And you ask them what's good, and they go, oh, it's all good.
It's all good.
There you go.
The other is that, like with a hotel, if it's homogenous, where they're trying to appease anybody that walks in the door, they don't have a clarity of focus on who they're trying to appease best. So with that logic in mind, the statement about branding is going into places that, obviously the article that Stephanie brought up that you posted, and I'll put the link up in just a second, is about the rise of the hotel owner. The brands, because of this slow growth in our market, this perpetual slow growth, that ownership has been venturing away from some brands, at least with their peak inventories, their premier properties. They're venturing away, saying, maybe we can do it ourselves and not have to pay the fees associated with branded. The assumption is that when the market goes south, that they're going to run back to brand, going, for safety and security. I don't think that's going to happen this time as much. I think it'll happen to some degree just because people don't know what to do. But I don't think it'll happen as much because of the statement I put into the side there, which is inverse. And this goes back to what Tim was saying about the EU community being more hospitality based. We are inverse. Our relationships exist to the shareholders of the companies, then to the franchisers and their relationships. And at the bottom of it, the guests who are going to be flavor of the day, what you're interested in giving them for the point of life where they're at. And it's inverse because I think a lot of independent hotels are non-branded hotels. Now, even if they stay affiliated with soft brands for distribution reasons, are seeing it that they can be more guest-centric and appease and satisfy the shareholder-franchise relationship, in the sense franchisers being the brick-and-mortar ownership groups and so forth that are beyond the shareholders that are running and operating, management groups and things like this. I think there's more of a collaboration between all of those two. So I thought it was a pretty cool article. I wish it was longer, to be honest with you, because I think she could have gone into more detail, but I think she had some pretty good highlights.
Well, and being the 200th show, I am obliged to mention, and without Ed and Tim here, they give me a hard time, but to mention why was Four Seasons a great company, right? They ran it on the golden rule for everyone needed to be treated with the respect that you would, hope to be treated with yourself. And that was the guest, who was obviously most important, but that applied to the staff, the vendors, the investors and owners, everybody. It's just like everybody deserves this high level of respect and to be treated with, as individuals who matter. And all of a sudden, if you do that,
I want to make that distinction because
absolutely.
Unfortunately, too often, I used to be in this position, and I totally respect what I mean by saying that when ownership was coming that day, we raised the ownership flag. Ding, 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 ding.
Yep.
Okay.
Clean everything.
When the management team group came in, management team for we basically, whoever was the victorious marching army through the lobby, that's who we were loyal to. By golly, we're going to focus on that.
As opposed to the people who are actually paying for all of that, which is the guest, right?
I had to learn that. Eventually, I had to start turning to being the advocate for the guests, where investors representing shareholders were wanting certain performance done. And I had to say, look, for those numbers to be reached, we have to be centric on what we're doing with the guests. We can't just yield it on a rate. We just can't yield it on reduction of services.
Right.
We can't yield it from operation cost reductions, which reduce guest experience quality. We have to amplify the guest satisfaction to ask for the rates, to show operational support so that we can validate those rates. That way you're going to get your money, but you're not going to get it on the margin by reducing operational costs or reducing are increasing rates. And I had to go advocacy for that. And same too with management companies. I had to fight them going, guys, you want these budget goals to be hit, you got to focus on what's generating the revenue.
It's like Super Bowls in town, right? And here's just this jack the rate to the top. It's like, are you doing anything special?
Right.
Are you providing, maybe you could provide some transportation to and from because it's a zoo. Maybe you could do some sort of special menu or special event or whatever that may be. And yeah, it's not something that's, baked in and, oh, we're promising this and you'll get the package. I mean, you can certainly try to do packages and things like that, but do something that exceeds the expectation. So when somebody's shelling out $750 for their little, room that's normally going for 75, maybe it isn't just like, you're completely profiteering from them.
Right.
So, yeah. What can you do for them? And it could be as simple as going out and getting, shirts or whatever. Hey, what's your shirt size? We're gonna go get, what team are you rooting for? Things like that, which are pretty simple to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? But anyway, if your team loses, give them a free drink that night in the bar. Or like
so did you hear that? Robert's buying the first beer at High Tech because your team lost the Netherlands. But
but again, I mean, there's simple. When you're getting 10x the revenue for that night, do you have to keep all of it, or can you actually, put something, a little? Is 9x okay, and you do something really cool for the guests, which is, either unexpected or above and beyond, right?
So your lead story about NYU's executive.
Yes.
Here's the two articles. Unfortunately, I took a negative turn to both of them because
they're. Oh, really?
Yes, because I thought it was self-effacing comments that, the guy that received the award going, we need more women up here and so forth. I would like to say that's great. Wonderful statement. What exactly are you doing to promote that opportunity? Because there is such a limited exposure beyond the, us groups to be in those chairs. What are you doing to advance that statement into a reality rather than just making we should all on for world peace and then get off the stage? It's like, what are you doing about world peace? Same thing with this. If you want more women up here getting awards for running companies, how many doors are you opening for them? What are you doing to get them into the role of success?
I'm not going to say the organization that I'm trying to make this happen with, but I am trying very, very hard to have not just a diverse panel, but a sole, all female panel on this particular show, because and there's a very, very good reason, and it's a very, very good audience to go do this, and it's very relevant, right? It's on brand, everything is perfect, and I'm getting some pushback from people who are members of this particular group by women who are going, oh, I don't know, maybe we should make it more international. It's like, no, you don't get the same, the same thing, and we'll see. We need to do it, because it's a huge opportunity to go, look at this, things have changed, things are good, and nobody's called it out yet, and it's like, come on, let's go be the first and celebrate this.
I don't again, not to name names and so forth, but I do have to give credit to some of the women that we know in the organizations that have risen, the Kellys and so forth, that have they used to be that for women to be strong in an executive leadership role, they had to be aggressive. In my mind, they always had to come into the room basically like swinging a baseball bat, because so many men were trying to diminish their importance, their perspective, their role, that they had to literally whack them over the head to say, shut up and listen to me.
Well, now, they might not have been consciously trying to do that. It's just they weren't being taken seriously as a peer, which is horrible. Which is
right.
Yeah, now, which is almost worse. If somebody's aggressively coming out, you might be able to see it and fight back. Here, it's just kind of this undercurrent of just.
What I've seen in the maturation of their management styles is they validated their capacities, their capabilities. They no longer have to make that point as a starting point of conversation. They walk in the door with credibility. They walk in the door with respect. And so now they can be a lot more engaging without being aggressive in that engagement, because more and more the men that have been this previous before have now taken them at face value and said, hey, look, we really respect what you're doing. We want to hear what you have to say. And they've come better at that. Wait a minute, is that Stuart? Mr. Stuart.
Wow.
What?
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello. Wait a minute.
Wow.
Polo shirt. That is a cool looking shirt, my friend. That is a
cool swag. Some fuel swag.
Yeah, fuel.
Yeah.
Now let's see.
This is not new high-tech uniform.
Say fuel? Fuel, or does it
on the back it says wanker? But other than that,
nice touch.
I was giving you. Ask Rob.
then it finishes. You know, the blogs. So then you're asking. Always be converting, and I don't mean that in terms of converting a
Very true. Very true. Hey, so Robert, I know we hit the NYU conversations, we hit the Rise of the Hotelier and so forth. Was there an article?
Well, we mentioned the title of it and posted. We didn't really talk about the
the leadership
content, but that's okay.
I know I bashed.
That's okay.
I know I bashed it, saying that I thought they were being too centric about. I wish there was more.
Yeah. Well, that was just
about it.
Yeah, I know, but that wasn't really the. I mean, Robert De Niro showed up at the conference.
Well, that's okay, great. Yeah.
So there, that's more on point. No, I thought it was again, Stephanie Ricca from Hotel News Now had some really good points. That I think on day 2 she said, "Fun fact: didn't hear the word downturn once in the last 2.5 days," which is pretty amazing. So on the flip side, if I had $1 or every time I heard the word automation, I would definitely be a few dollars richer. So they've figured out that they've just really, automation is the hot thing. And it's amazing. The stats in terms of where the industry is, hey guys, it's not only plateaued, but get ready for things to come down. What I loved was tourism economics forecast. Right now, they said here the main numbers, right? Our supply growth is the same at 1.9%. Demand growth this year is 2%, so a little bit higher than supply growth. Next year, it's going to be lower, 1.7%. So, more supply than demand. That's not good. That results in occupancy dropping by 0.2%. Here's the interesting one. They're predicting ADR going up from 1.9% growth to 2.2% growth. And you go, wait a second. You're showing demand's growing higher than supply. In ADR on a 12-month moving average, it's additional dollar. And when you look at occupancy percentage, hey, you know what? The 12-month moving average peaked in April, guys, and it's been in the same, like within 0.5 percentage point since. And again, this is a 12-month moving average. I would say for the last year, which is that is a plateau, folks. So, I just don't know where these guys are getting their numbers and their forecasts. It's like, is this a downturn? No, but boy, it is
certainly a slowdown for sure.
Yeah, I mean the growth has stopped, and now the rate, what was being relied on for rate has stopped growing at least as fast, and be careful. And again, that's why they're looking at costs, and that's why the hotel owners are in a world of hurt. That they've got.
That's only a week and a half away. That's high tech. We're talking about automation. We're talking about what's coming into space. We're talking about what's going to be there and stuff. We're all going to be there. Is this? Do we think what's because every year there's a predominance on the floor. Each year there's something that's more predominant than everything else. Is automation and usage of automation, AI integration, is this going to be the thing on the floor this year? Is that going to be the dominant thing that all the tech stacks are going to be saying?
Everybody will be saying AI, but they've got shitty data to base it on, so it's not going to work.
That's funny.
And you can quote me on that. So, yeah,
That's funny.
that's going to be the problem. It's clean up the damn data. And how do you clean it up? You got to get it out of these silos. You've got to, make sure.
But I think that, and Lauren, if you were up to date on the podcast, you would have heard our predictions, because we did episode 112 a couple of weeks ago on exactly this, what's going to be going on at high tech. And I think there is going to be a lot of AI buzz, and a lot of it is going to be noise, not really meaningful. But I think integration is the other thing, because Robert's exactly right. To get to the point where the data is clean enough and robust enough for machine learning to really have an impact, a meaningful impact, we've got to get the PMS guys to open up. We've got to get someone to kind of normalize the data from all your providers. So I think you're going to see PMS is beginning to open up. We're seeing that from an integration perspective. We're getting phone calls back from them when we picked up the phone and call them, which we didn't used to. We're going to see a lot of folks like Happy coming into the space, and other vendors trying to provide that kind of data bus level, where all the vendors integrate to them instead of peer-to-peer directly to each other. And then I think a lot of people are going to be talking about AI and automation through AI for sure.
Do you think that there's going to be conversations of creating a Rosetta Zone of commonalities, terminologies, and PMS systems? Because as we know from variations of PMSs, the same data is labeled so differently depending on the platform.
No, they aren't. They aren't going to change that. That's just. No. That's horrible. It's got to have some sort of middleware layer that takes care of, which is what Happy's basically doing.
So Happy's in the same spot, because nobody's going to just short circuit their dominion by saying, let's standardize this into a common language format. They're not going to go that route.
Yeah.
The
PMS is too stuck in their ways, and I mean, it's hard to get them to change anything at this point. And even looking at something like what you call a rate code is different in every PMS. The nomenclature is completely different. So, additional services and sundries are called different things, and how they're stored is different. So there's no way they would normalize. There's no incentive for any one PMS to change theirs to meet someone else's, So
to make it easier to leave. I mean, they would be looking at it. Oh, they wouldn't necessarily be looking at it. If we normalize this stuff, it's going to be easier for people to come over, because they aren't normalizing it to each of the competitors, right?
Nope.
So they would look at it, if we normalize it, it's going to be easier for people to leave. And what's the ROI on that? That's negative, so don't do that.
Yeah, let's stay away from that.
Another thing to it too is that these platforms have just turned into a blind eye to guest engagement, because, and I'll call them out on it, Sabre. They're going to go under an upgrade this Saturday from 6 a.m. to 11. No apologies, no nothing. Just be prepared for the fact we're not going to be doing bookings for 5 hours, that your system won't be working, and that you can't do anything with your system, and we'll let you know when it's back on. And this is the second time in 3 months. It's like, they don't care. Hey, we're doing it.
But that's...
Hey, you know how you can fix that? Stop your booking engine from going down like that? Just switch to Fuel's booking engine, and you don't have that problem.
Idea. Guys don't do that. You guys are very appreciative of everybody that comes over to your side of the fence.
That's
because gosh knows, nothing says hospitality like 5 hours of not using your website.
Yeah.
or
and then
platforms for that matter,
And what's so incredibly ironic, not to beat on Sabre, but the host, the GDS host, probably has the best uptimes of almost any systems on the planet, right? I mean, they make Six Sigma look like, I don't know how many decimal points they go to, but the thing is like always up, right? I mean, it has to be. So yeah, I mean, and that's the whole thing.
I don't
to go
understand
do these
how,
things.
even from a web hosting service perspective, that you can't ghost load.
It's a system architecture though. Nah,
and then migrate over to it. I understand hiccups, but
it's too complicated. But it's too complicated. What they did is they bought Synixus, right? And Synixus had previously integrated with HubX, which was kind of the CRS, and that's still kind of the core platform. And then they bolted on a whole pile of other stuff, right? They bought the was a HotelSoft. What was the name of the group that was the property management system for Wyndham that a lot of Wyndham property uses, which is how they got the Wyndham deal, right? They bought the PMS that 40% of the Wyndham properties used, right? So that integrated work. So all of a sudden you've got all this stuff and they cannot develop. They have most of the, particularly the GDSs, really subpar test systems, right? I mean, they are not robust. It's static data, has nothing to do with reality. So they don't have a situation where they can have, here's this parallel system with the new software running on it where it's been thoroughly load tested and all this stuff. It's just, that's not an environment that you can do in the cloud much more easily, where literally you're just saying, here's the live system pointer from point A to point B, and you've run it through a bunch of virtual, load testing and things like that to make sure this thing doesn't break. Those aren't the technologies being used, right? So you wind up with a 5-hour outage on a Saturday morning, which they probably figured out was the best time to do it, where quite honestly, back when I was there, they didn't have people coming in on the weekends to do it. It was done during the week, during some sort of period of time, right? Because it was more convenient for people to cover. So yeah, it's or you did upgrades twice.
Just like the other 199 shows.
Well,
Failure.
and we
Come
might
on.
as well finish off on a downer, since we started on a downer. Just
Oh yeah, it's your story.
Ed's-
Yeah.
yeah. Ed had a fire in his hotel the other day, so he
What?
and
Wow.
complimented
Yeah, I believe the
an ice machine caught on fire. Yeah, and the hotel handled it exceptionally well, and it was very, it's a very positive story, which was
Wow, that's great.
which was good. But the Rut-Row this week is China's latest message to its people from CNN: the United States is evil, don't go there, which is that's not good, sort of thing. And coming out of the NYU investment conference, there were actually a couple very interesting, which I thought were great quotes. Let's see if I can find it on. I think it was off of day one. Hang on. One was very, very diplomatic from Marriott, which basically said, well, we're working with them, we're just trying to do things like that, which no, here it is. It's fair to say that driving growth in inbound travel is not on the administration's agenda, period. So that was Arnie Sorensen kind of, just kind of saying, yeah, they just aren't dealing with it. Where Sebastian Bazin, the CEO of Accor, said he's not worried about it too much. If they don't come to America, they come to Europe. So, so that's the thing that, the U.S., I think inbound tourism from China is down like 15% or something like that, and looking like it's going to work, which is obviously with a growing and mobile middle class there, and India in particular. Huge opportunities when people are talking about balance of payments and trade deficits and things like that. Travel is probably one of the easiest ways to negate a trade deficit, but we aren't really doing that. So,
Right.
and with a hotelier leading the country, that makes it just
he's
extra
not a
ironic.
hotelier.
Extra ironic.
He's a real estate investor.
That's true. He's a real
he's not a
estate
hotelier.
investor. Yeah, that's true.
He just shut off Cuba, which was incredibly brilliantly stupid. So yeah, great direction it's going.
So anyway, on our 200th show, it's like, well,
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest Rut-Row we've had, I would say.
That's pretty bad. I mean, especially when you go back to what you were talking about in terms of demand is plateauing, and we look for areas of growth. That's certainly not going to come from the U.S. That the economy is just not in a position to be driving new growth of travel. So you've got to look abroad, and it's probably not coming through Europe. Certainly not like traditional places like the UK with all the stuff they've got going on. So
right.
I mean, you've got to look to Asia and China specifically, and India, and this is
growing economies, and again, people who are and the U.S. is a highly attractive destination
for sure,
and people don't just come in and pop in for a day and leave, sort of thing. They're here for at least a week, sort of thing. So that sort of thing, the employment, and then you pile on the challenge. The other thing the hoteliers are having is their labor costs are rising because they can't get staff, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the other problem, where almost you say, well, maybe this does make sense, because if you did have all this demand, you couldn't have the staff to serve it, sort of thing. Which, but again, not a good cycle of things that could really help grow the economy, which makes me sad. But,
yeah, that is indeed a Rut-Row for sure.
Yeah. So
no, and with the Huawei thing, it's not helping Canada either. Canada, I mean, I have plans in Canada, and the negative impact of how they handled the retaining of the girl, one of their executives, to be to sit down and so forth.
Huawei,
the Chinese coming to the country, their engagements with a lot of their business and group of businesses and so forth, because what people forget is the China government can literally say, yeah, no, you're not going to go there. We're not going to allow you to go that way. We're only going to allow you this way, not that way, kind of stuff. So there is a lot of control that has as to where they regulate their travel and so forth too. So it's a smart thing in any sense.
And with Huawei, actually Google came out this morning and actually made a statement that they believe that they're not playing with Huawei actually reduces the security of the U.S. and things like that.
I take that with a grain of salt.
It's going to be very, I know. Yeah, I mean, certainly, yes, they don't want to lose out on Android doing that. But again, I think their case is, look, if we're involved with this, we manage the core things. Now you're just saying, here's this whole other thing that's out there that you know nothing. Right. Yeah.
Well, don't shoot a thing that you can't replace. And what Huawei does is not immediately replaceable in a lot of stuff. I mean, and from the EU side, it was big news over there about how the US is against them and how England and other countries are using their electronics and software in their security protocols and in their intelligence research and so forth. And, how is that going to work with the U.S. that is against it? How are they going to collaborate with it? And you have Dunshead going and say, oh, it won't be a problem at all. It's like, yeah, it's actually a problem if you're going to say, no, you're going to work with it. And, so we'll see. But there's a lot of, I don't know, Stuart, with what you keep in connection with friends and family and so forth. I've never been in such a tumultuous EU world as I was in this last trip. Countries talking about each other in a really nationalist way. The EU just had its elections, and the multiplicity of parties and the segmentations. The good side was the predominantly large static parties have to now collaborate with the smaller parties because they've lost a lot of their dominance. The negative is these smaller parties are freaking radical ass, multiple left, multiple right things that are way off on either end. Where you have isolationists on one side, you have tree, super green on this. I mean, crazy variations that just don't exist in our current politics in the States.
The social media systems are designed to amplify those, right?
Oh,
I mean,
it's not just social media; it's media in general.
All media in
general. Yeah. I mean, the Australian
everyone lives in their little bubble echo chamber now, and it just pushes people to the extreme in every direction of their lives.
And the things that are going on, I mean, the Italian prime minister's threatening to resign if he doesn't get the parties to talk to each other. You got the Australian people that most of their contingencies on the right-wing people had to resign because they had, they were selling off contracts to the Russian oligarchy. Ed's coming back when we're saying goodbye. What?
What?
I got to get out of here.
What are you doing back? We're saying bye, and we said bad stuff about you, and we're ready.
He must have heard what Stuart said about you.
No, I saw Stuart came on, so I was like, I can't not be on when Stuart's on. I haven't
spoken to you in a while.
I know. I was on vacation.
There you go.
The first part of the show was about that.
Yeah, I heard that you were saying you've picked up the arsonist kind of hobby.
Yeah, he's got the
reacquired.
Ed's back in the 12-step program to get him. Yeah, this whole arson thing is a problem. So
yeah, he took the.
So we're saying goodbye.
Yeah, I've got to jump off, but
you'll be happy to know we didn't cover any news topics except Lauren pulling out one. Yeah, except the rut.
Oh, good. So good. Then the show was as if I was here.
Perfect. 200th episode.
We did agree that there's no good side of the bed for you. Every side's a bad side of the bed for you.
What are you talking about? I'm not cranky.
Hey, should I tell him my theory? Should I tell him my theory? I don't know.
Of course. I want to hear your theory.
My theory, because I know you don't watch the show, is that every morning.
If I'm not on it, there is no show, right?
It's the Schrodinger's cat approach too. But anyway, every day Ed wakes up, there's a pillow being pressed over his head by his wife, so it tends to make him a little cranky. So that's
yeah, that's probably true. Hey, Mr. Since you're back,
Ed's like, how did you know that?
Yeah.
So isn't that how everyone wakes up every morning?
Yeah, I thought that was married.
Yeah, I've woken up like that for 35 years. Yeah.
Well, I set my alarm early so I can be the one.
Wow.
Mr. Ed, since you came back and you get to be the first to say goodbye, if you want to know more about Flip2, where is it they can find the information, sir?
You can go to flip.to, or you can find me on social media, Edward St. Ange.
And Mr. Robert Cole, if they want to know more about Rock Cheetah and your curated news content of happiness and joy.
Curated.
Rockcheetah.com or Robert K. Cole. not the Rock Cheetah Twitter account. that is not curated. That is
value
We'll
your
talk a lot
time.
more about high tech and what to expect in our participation there in at Rock. But in the meanwhile, Mr. Stuart Butler, if people want to know about fuel travel and your amazing podcast and everything else that's about fuel travel, where can they go, sir?
Fueltravel.com is the mothership. That's where you can get the podcasts and all great information. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fuel Travel as well. We're going to be at High Tech in a couple of weeks, so booth 2920 if you want to come say hey to me, and Lauren will be there and doing interviews and whatnot. So it should be fun.
Will Ed
And just
be
look for
there?
the very tall pole with the camera on the top.
Nope. This is my off year. Every other year, High Tech.
Ed
Every
hates
other
High
year.
Tech. You didn't realize this?
They
What
ruined
do you
it.
think about the name hospitalitymarketing.live as a new domain for the show?
Yeah, because that won't be confusing.
That's not confusing. Hospitalitymarketing.live.
.com.
No, .live. Just
And
dot.
everyone will go .live.com.
Yeah, and it'll end up on Microsoft.
Yeah.
You don't like it? I thought it was a very succinct,
I
straightforward.
mean, granted, it's shorter. So I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good in
You're
some
being
ways.
right
Remember when
about it.
Overstock changed to O.co? Didn't work out well for them, did
at
it?
all, it did not work
Yeah.
out well at all for them.
Hospitalitymarketing.live. You don't like it. I was
I
so
don't like
happy.
any non-normal top-level domain.
I agree with you
No.
on the .com versus everything else in the universe. Yes, but it is
Well,
a live.
.live
show.
is
You can have
longer than
hospitality.
.com.
Yeah.
I think I
At
have
least
one-
go shorter. Would you like me to give you hospitalitymarketing.to?
No, Barbara, you have my list of ones.
Live
Don't I have
from
like
Tonga.
hospitalitymarketing.tv or something, or hospitality TV or something? I don't know. I have hospitality. I have another one too, but I love the hospitalitymarketing.
How about laurentube.com?
No, it's not .com.
You know, you could probably sell the
Currently-
Lauren Gray. Well, you may be able to sell laurengray.com for a big amount of money and then go be able to buy
I should
a-
be able to do that 16-year-old girl. You're absolutely right. Currently, though, this show and all previous 199 are available at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com /live.
/live.
Yeah, so you can see all that /live.
Live.
Hey,
Dot
hey,
slash
Stuart,
live.
when will we be able to buy Stew Brew on Amazon or something?
I've done one batch of Stew Brew's IPA, and it's
I've heard it
getting
was
good
good.
reviews. It's getting good
Yeah.
reviews. So yeah, I
Now,
think I've
is
got
there
about
reviews
12
from
left,
anyone who
but-
don't work for you or you're
Yeah,
related
no.
to?
the
Okay.
exact same response has come from everyone. They kind of
It's sheer
sheepishly
and utter shock.
they
that it's
sheepishly
not-
take a sip, and then they're like, that's a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
That's the key. Low expectations
Yeah.
to success. The key to success, low expectations.
So yeah, I just gave a growler of it to one of my largest clients. So he's not going to have a problem being honest with me. So I'm waiting to hear what he says. But yeah,
Since you're shipping packages up to High Tech, is some of it's going to get stashed in there too?
I was
or
wondering about that. I don't know. I might try to smuggle a few bottles.
Stew Brew.
Yeah,
Like,
I've got some left. so-
Smuggle like the drug type of smuggle? Because if so, wash the bottle before handing them out.
Yeah, and I'm just
Uh,
worried about it getting worrying about it getting there in one
It's a
piece.
big bottle.
Yeah.
Maybe uncomfortable.
especially if you put a cap on it. That
Yeah.
could, anyway,
Oh,
I
all right.
finally watched Deadpool 2, so I could use the nomenclature they use there, the prison wallet.
yep, prison wallet.
Yeah.
Since we are focusing on tragedy and things like that on this show and a
Oh, did I set
celebratory-
that tone? Did that continue?
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, sweet.
There was a fellow who passed away. He had 246 packets of cocaine. Apparently, he ingested them, and I guess he passed on. Yeah, apparently that seemed to be They had a great idea for how to smuggle stuff, which apparently nobody had tried before. But
I mean, to be
it
fair
didn't
to
work
him,
out.
it didn't say anywhere on the package that he shouldn't do it. You know,
Right.
exactly.
Did not have correct
You
warning
notice it
labels.
said biodegradable packaging, so maybe there was a
Right.
problem with the actual packaging.
He's now
itself.
suing. Yeah, suing the producer too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you all very, very much. Show 200, and we're coming up on our 5-year in August. Show 216 or something like that. So we're almost there. I'm trying to do all new branding and so forth. I apparently do not know how to pick a URL quite yet, since my latest idea.
As the show leaves its toddler phase, it does not show any sign of maturing.
Exactly.
The lessons we learned
Development.
first, and these lessons we've learned. Don't change what's just don't change it. So. All right, gentlemen, thank you so very much. Talk to everybody next week. And to everyone that watches the show, and for next week, EU and APAC will get their live shows on Monday. So till then, bye.